On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, holy hot damn, the Toronto Raptors have got themselves a bench.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the number one sports podcast network in the world, officially. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 12 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. And thrilled to have you along here for a Monday, November the 17th episode of the podcast as your Toronto Raptors are 8-5, winners of 7 of their last 8. And we are going to get into all of it after another win over the weekend against a not very good Pacers team to finish off a 4-1 Eastern Conference road trip. They're back at home tonight against the Charlotte Hornets, also not a very good team. We will get into the bench absolutely whipping ass. We'll talk about Mamu and Shed and Gradey Dick, the good, the bad, and the all coming up. We'll do that throughout today's show. Today's episode, of course, is brought to you by Game Time. Down the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And yeah, sitting here Monday, November the 17th, the Raptors, I believe, 4th in the Eastern Conference right now, 8-5, as I mentioned, 7-1 in their last 8, as you know. And just a little update on where the Raptors sit before we dive into the nuts and bolts of today's show. Per Cleaning the Glass, which takes out garbage time, where the Raptors have been weirdly bad. Like their bench guys come in and they give up big leads. It doesn't matter because it's garbage time, but in the minutes that actually matter, Cleaning the Glass has the Toronto Raptors as the number 6 offense in basketball and the number 9 defense in basketball. Top 10 on both ends. Pretty important thing. That is usually the sort of marker of a very good team. They're the only team in the Eastern Conference that can claim top 10 on both ends, and one of only 4 teams in the league. The other 3 are Houston, Denver, and OKC. All pretty good. The Raptors have the number 2 offense in the Eastern Conference behind only the New York Knicks. They have the number 3 defense in the conference as well. It's very exciting. And look, we've done a lot of appreciation of Scotty Barnes and his two-way play. Having Brandon Ingram is awesome. RJ Barrett, plenty of love for him. Really nice bounce back for him on Saturday against the Pacers. Emmanuel Quickley's putting up 25-6 and 71% true shooting over his last 5 games. That's pretty sweet. But today is all about the bench. And we're going to talk about Gradey Dick a little later, little Colin Murray Boyles. But we got to start with everyone's favorite two-man wrecking crew, Mamu and Jamal Shead. Sandro Mamukelashvili, the minimum signing with a player option for next year. He's not picking that up at this rate. He might go down as one of the best one-and-done Toronto Raptors of all time as things are currently tracking. But Mamu and Jamal Shead have just been so damn fun. And really, they're working on what is in the early days of becoming an all-time like fan favorite buddy cop duo for a season in Raptors history. I think back to, early days, you had your T-Mac and Vince and all of that. That was very nice. You have your super high-level duos, TJ Ford and Chris Bosh. Kyle and DeMar obviously are the S tier of this category. You had Yak and Skills when they were young bench guys for the bench mob back in the day. There have been plenty of interesting, fun duos in Raptors history, but Mamu and Shed are already putting themselves into the short list of like the most charismatic and enjoyable and frankly unexpected, just killer two-man combinations coming off this Raptors bench, which has just been incredible. We'll get into some of the numbers over the course of the day, but just seeing these two guys kind of find themselves, right? Mamu's been this dude who's floated around the league, been a bit of a gunner off the bench, someone who has never really gotten an extremely long leash. You wonder if the Milwaukee Bucks wish they had given him some more time when he was like a 13th, 14th man on Giannis teams. And the San Antonio Spurs, as a spacing big man next to Wemby, couldn't do a lot better as like a bench piece than Mamu is playing right now. Really great, deft pickup signing by the Raptors. And he's just found a team on which he can just do his gunner thing on offense. He's being emboldened to take threes anytime they come to him. His dribble game, gets the ball in his hands, puts it on the deck, picking it up, going coast to coast off of rebounds and scoring. The finishing's been incredible. He's been so fun. And then Jamal Shead, You have the driving, the paint pressure, the playmaking. The three-point shot is going at a crazy clip right now. It's probably not going to stay in the mid-40s because that would be nuts, and it'd be kind of an all-time outlier shooting jump from a guy who hasn't really been a good shooter in his career. But I do think we saw some steps last year from him as a shooter. I even wrote about it when I was doing the newsletter last season, and talked to Jamal and, just sort of the mechanical changes he was working on. And it seems as though those have really paid off this season. And again, even if he's like a 36% three-point shooter, everything else he's doing, the ball security, the setting other dudes up, like just everything he's doing just screams tidy, competent backup point guard. And he's obviously getting a little bit more run to play with starters. He's played in those 2-point guard lineups with Quickly. He's probably going to get a shot to close games if the Raptors ever play a close game, which they seemingly never do. They either just win by a lot or lose by just enough that it's not close. It's been super cool to see Jamal Shead just kind of find himself. He's beloved within that locker room. Scotty Barnes spoke glowingly of him. I think after the game it might have been after Thursday's game or Saturday's game. They'll run together when they're on the road. But just about how, like, in year 2, he's already one of the leaders of the locker room and all that stuff. And we've known that stuff about Jamal Shead. He comes from a winning program at Houston where he was one of just like the most prolific winners in college basketball when he was there. I think we've always known that the on-ball defensive stuff with him is really exciting and interesting and certainly plays well with what the Raptors want to do with their guards defensively. But just seeing his offensive repertoire kind of round into form here, he's using a left hand, which is like a thing he was playing with one hand all last year. Just, I'm going right. I'm going right. There's been a little bit more variability with that. The way he's operating pick and rolls and just sort of waiting for things to develop. He had that one possession with Mamu in the first half, I think, against the Pacers, where he runs a pick and roll with Mamu. He kind of turns the corner, and then he just kind of waits it out. He waits it out until two guys come his way, and he drops it right back to Mamu, who dunks it. Just like a lot of patience, a lot of craft, a lot of just point guard brain stuff going on with Jamal Shead right now. He ranks incredibly highly when it comes to assist percentage and assist per usage, which is a cleaning the glass stat, which measures the amount of assists you're getting based on the amount of time you have the ball. He's 100th percentile among guards in assist usage ratio. That's incredible. He's been just so good, and him and Mamu together, they are just driving so much success when they're on the floor right now. This was very clear in the game on Saturday against the Pacers. Of course, I'm not getting too much into the nuts and bolts of the Pacers game because, like, the Pacers are a disaster and they're injured and it sucks. And it wasn't like a terribly interesting game X's and O's wise. But I do think, sort of narratively, there's been this sort of thing where the starters are struggling. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. They certainly struggled to start this game against the Pacers. Part of it was the Pacers were white hot from three, and a bunch of guys who don't actually ever hit threes were hitting threes. That is what it is. But, there's been this sort of, through line of the season of the starters are kind of meh. They'll have some moments that most of their best moments have been sort of reserved for second halves and fourth quarters. They've been rough in a lot of first quarters. But then you have Mamu and Shed who can just come in and kind of right the ship and get the Raptors back on solid ground. And it's just been so fun every single night to kind of count on that and know what's happening. And it obviously happened in this Pacers game as well. They go down 22-12. They make the subs. The guys come in. Mamu goes off for 12 points on 5 of 9, plus 14 in his minutes. Jamal Shead, a plus 17 in his minutes in this game as well. 7 points, 4 assists, nothing sexy, but just like running the show beautifully, not turning the ball over, a couple of steals. And again, like the paint pressure he provides is so exciting and dynamic and gives such an interesting wrinkle for the Raptors when they have all these other guys who can do stuff attacking a tilted defense. If you can put a Scotty Barnes or a Brandon Ingram or an Emmanuel quickly in a spot where they don't have to create everything, and it's just coming to one of those guys after the defense has been compromised because Jamal Shead, of all people, has compromised it, that's such a huge advantage. Attacking a tilted defense is always going to be better than attacking a ready and sort of prepared and in position defense, whether you're the best player in the league or not. And Shead is giving them that outlet to just sort of throw it to him and have him do the creation of the sort of first step of initiation, create that first advantage. And we've talked about this with the Raptors offense, right? It's just advantage layering all the way through where one guy creates something, quick decision, next guy makes the decision that then adds to that advantage. And all of a sudden you have the 6th best offense in the NBA. That's been the formula. And Shead and Mamu together, I mean, the impact's been very obvious. When they're on the floor together, 122.5 offensive rating per clean the glass, 98.3 defensive rating. Okay, like incredible. That's 100th percentile defense. They're a plus 24.2 net rating overall. and they're a 99th percentile lineup on cleaning glass right now. Just incredible stuff when those two guys are on the floor. The Raptors are waxing other teams. Yes, it's taking advantage of other teams' second units, but like, this is the regular season. This is how you build leads. This is how you hold on to leads. This is how you build a cushion, is have a bench that's just better than the other teams. And all of a sudden, you're rolling yourself to a lot of wins in an 8-5 start in the Raptors' case. This is their formula for regular season success: depth and just a good bench where you can sprinkle it in with other guys. Obviously, those defensive numbers are largely because Mamu was always on the floor with one of Scotty or Colin Murray-Boyle, sometimes both. A lot of the times it's Scotty. And we've seen the defensive impact Scotty's had this year. Just, yeah, they've been such a delight. They are early fan favorites, extremely easy to root for, easy to like guys. And I can't see really anything kind of getting in their way at this point. Yeah, the shooting might come down for Shed, but otherwise, the process stuff with them is great. And even Mamu, like, not a good defender by any means, but he tries hard enough that he'll wander into a defensive stop or two every once in a while. He's okay switching on smaller guys in the perimeter because he's kind of quick. Had that nice block at the rim in the game against the Pacers as well. He's doing stuff. He's trying his darndest out there, which is all you can ask for. And yeah, the on-off impact for both guys has been ridiculous. They are, however, not the guys who lead the team in terms of best on-off differential. No, that is one Gradey Dick, who we will talk about coming up next, who I think is doing all of the right things, and the dam is about to burst. We'll get into that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Logging in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop within Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's show is also brought to you by friends over at Game Time. The NBA season's rolling along. The Toronto Raptors are back at home tonight against the Charlotte Hornets. They take on the Washington Wizards at home on Friday as well in the NBA Cup. The NBA Cup, it's coming home, baby. And nothing beats being in the arena to watch your local basketball team, especially when they're winning the basketball games. Ain't that a ton of fun? And Game Time is the single best place to get tickets for the games you want to go to. That is where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It is your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and for free. Lots of great features, of course. They have the upfront pricing. There's no back-end fees that get added on. What you see is what you're going to pay when you get to checkout. That's a big deal. You get seat views. If you've never been to an arena before or a stadium, whatever, you can see what you're going to see from your seats. That's a huge deal, especially if you're going to like an older baseball stadium. There's lots of weird and random pillars at old baseball stadiums. Avoid getting stuck behind one of them pillars. Use the Game Time seat views, and you'll be laughing when you finally go wherever it is you want to go. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Take down the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Back at it here on your Monday, taking stock of a Toronto Raptors 129-111 romp of an Indiana Pacers team that started nobly. Hey, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl hitting a couple threes. Andrew Nembhard, he of the 25% three-point percentage coming into the game, just banging every three he took. It only lasted so long because the Pacers have like two good players currently playing, and there's a whole lot of Tony Bradley out there for your Indiana Pacers. Look, they'll be fine. It's a shame, though, because they were a lot of fun, and they won't be fun until next year when Tyler Halliburton is back. They are already basically out of it. Anyway, the other sort of, we talked a lot about Mamu and Shed off the top, and they've been incredible. They've been the sort of two big-ticket guys where their shots are falling. Everything they're doing on the floor is leading to good things, plus-minus-wise for the team. But I do think there's been a bit of an unheralded bench guy who I think sometimes gets maligned for, fairly bad defense. And when the shots aren't falling, it just doesn't quite feel amazing with him. But Gradey Dick, I think, is doing everything right at the moment. And I think it's only a matter of time before the threes start falling at like the clip that we typically expect from a guy who was branded maybe the best shooter in his draft. It's never quite panned out that way. I think largely because the difficulty of the shots he takes brings down his overall percentage. But like, he's so dynamic. And right now, the impact of him on the floor is so immense. It just feels like at some point here, the threes are going to start to fall. And all of a sudden, you're going to look at Gradey Dick, and it's like, oh, he's averaging like 11 or 12 a game, and he's just kind of doing it every single night, and he's making all these lineups better. He already is doing that. I mentioned before the break, Mamu and Shed have been incredible. They have been huge on-off guys, but the single best on-off differential guy on the entire roster right now is Gradey Dick, and it's not especially close. He has a plus 30.5 on-off differential per clean the glass, which means the Toronto Raptors are 30.5 points better when Gradey Dick plays versus when he sits. That's a huge deal. The next highest on the team is Jamal Shead at 15. That's double the impact if you're going to go on this pure basis of the on-off differentials for Gradey Dick. When he's on the floor, the Toronto Raptors are absolutely waxing teams. And you might say, well, like, okay, but like the defense can't be good, right? No, the defense is performing very well with him. The Raptors defense is 18.6 points per 100 possessions better with Gradey Dick on the floor versus when he's off. And that's not me saying that Gradey Dick is playing Kawhi Leonard level wing defense up there, because he's not. We know this, but he's doing enough, and he's able to be hidden, and he's not taking things away. And yeah, part of it, he's playing against second units as well, so there's fewer places for him to go and get sort of picked at by superior players. But the way the Raptors play, right? Like, it's not like they're going straight all bench against, the other team's starter, or the transitional lineups are so sort of fluid that he's playing against all kinds of competition. And so I think it's worth remarking upon that Gradey Dick is doing a lot of things really well to make the Raptors a more potent basketball team. Again, just 7.5 points a game, 34% from deep. It's all pretty meh, but like, he's an ultimate example of why counting stats are not everything. When he's on the floor, everything's working. The flow of the offense is beautiful. And he's doing some things like tangibly differently this year than he was last year. And it's just like a lot of low-hanging fruit stuff. First of all, again, on the defense, look, he's not going to be an ace shutdown individual isolation defender ever. We know this, but he's making some events happen. He's forcing some steals. He has a career high steal percentage. He is getting in passing lanes and recovering back when he gambles and doesn't quite get it. I think most notably, though, he's not fouling at all. Like, he's just completely eradicated the foul percentage. He's like near the top of the league in terms of avoiding fouls, just a 2% foul rate. And like, he's just, again, it's all this incremental stuff. Like, his offensive dynamism is so important and so valuable to the players he's playing with that he doesn't need to do that much on defense to break even, as it were. And he's doing that well above what you could hope for so far to start the year. The other thing too, on offense, you can think of last couple of years of how sort of squirrely Gradey Dick would look with the ball, right? Get the ball, loose handle, gets it poked to loose all the time. He had a turnover rate of over 11% over the last couple seasons per clean the glass. This season, it's down to 4.2%. He's just not kicking possessions away. He's just he's playing within himself, right? It's coming to him. He's either shooting it or he's making the next, put it on the deck, make a dribble or two, make the next right pass. It's very simple stuff, but the pure gravity he has as a shooter who defenses care about, even though the threes don't fall at the clip everyone would love to see, the way he's defended suggests that teams are terrified of Gradey Dick taking wide open threes. And once those threes do start to fall, which I think they will, because the diet of threes he's getting this year is so much easier than it was last year. The shot making is going to come along because it's coming to him so easily within the flow. He doesn't have to work for everything like he did last year, when for the first part of the season, he was like the number 2 option on the team for a time. When Scotty was out, when Quickly was out, it was RJ Barrett and Gradey Dick and nobody else. And Gradey Dick had an incredible first 3 months of the season where he couldn't miss and was putting up like 18 a game. And then he completely lost his legs and the gas left the tank and all of that. But now he's in this role where he's just like a 4th or 5th option out there. He's just an outlet for the sort of flow of the offense, and sometimes it comes to him, sometimes it doesn't. But just the threat of it coming to him changes the shape of the defense the Raptors are attacking. It makes the spacing that much better for a guy like Scotty Barnes or RJ Barrett, who we know thrive when they have a little more space to operate on the inside. When you have Dick and Mamu out there, it's just a lot of shooting and a lot of driving lanes for guys who are really effective when they have driving lanes. And yeah, like I don't need Gradey Dick out there averaging 14 points a game or anything like that. He doesn't have to go and take over games with the ball in his hands. Not that that's the thing he's ever really done, but being this sort of really nice role player who just makes the life easier for everyone he's playing with on offense, that's a huge deal. And he's doing exactly that. I'd be interested in seeing a little bit more of Gradey Dick playing with like Emmanuel Quickly, Ingram, Barnes, and Pirtle, kind of replacing RJ in that starting five combination. Not to say like they should start games with him, because we'll get to that in a sec. That's not happening. But as like one of those transitional lineups to throw him in with the four starters. Maybe he's the first sub in for RJ or something like that. Wouldn't mind seeing a little more of that. We've only seen 3 possessions of that so far. I'm curious to see how the defense would look with that crew. Because, I mean, the defense isn't great with the starters anyway. And Gradey Dick, I think, is offering, pretty much the same amount of resistance that RJ is on defense right now this season, which, again, not exactly a high bar to clear. But I'm just curious with that extra shooting, what that would do to the offense. And the offense is already performing extremely well with RJ and the starters. That's not their problem by any means. So maybe you're just kind of putting a hat on a hat by putting Gradey in there. Maybe you're making the defense a little worse. But no, I just something I'm interested in seeing. And look, just this bench, man. The combination they have, this was what I was saying coming into the year, why I felt good about this bench. And it wasn't because the individual guys were incredible. They didn't have someone who's probably going to go and win 6th man of the year by putting up crazy totals. They just got a lot of guys with interesting and effective skills within this quartet of Mamu, Shed, Dick, and Colin Murray-Boyles, who was really good in the game against the Pacers. All of these guys just kind of bring stuff that accentuate and accent what everyone else does, right? Shed's ball handling gives you the license to unleash IQ off the ball in those starter-heavy lineups. That's a ton of fun. Obviously, just his general creation makes life easier for everybody because he's setting the table, right? He's just putting people on a tee to get easy shots. His threes falling also helps big time. Mamu, again, he provides that space to give room to operate for a guy like Scotty, a guy like RJ, a guy like Quickly, a guy like Ingram. Like having a guy above the break bombing like 40% from deep changes the way defenses have to approach help and bailing out, the guys who've been beaten off the bounce and all of that. It's a huge deal. And then you have, Gradey Dick mentioned his just sort of like additive offensive skills, the gravity, the movement, the cutting, the transition play in the game against the Pacers was really nice finishing there. You'd like to see him finish better at the rim as well, but it's not like he's, gotten any worse. He's basically where he's always been as a rim finisher. The shot making, the 3-point shot, the mid-range stuff is all there. And again, he just makes life easier for everyone on the floor. And then Colin Murray-Boyles is someone who can take the defensive pressure off of Scotty Barnes, who's a good rebounder. He runs the floor and fits well with a lot of the more sort of space-heavy guys that the team plays. It's just a nice group of bench guys who, if you played all 4 of them and another 5th guy as a bench lineup, they might not do great. But if you put them with better players, they're all just bringing up the level of everyone else because of the way they complement the skills of the best players on the team. It's really fun. And look, I know as the bench plays this well, the starters conversation is going to continue to be a thing. Oh, the starters are not really killing it. No, they're like sort of around average. They're above 0 in terms of net rating one day and slightly below the next. I think they were -3 in the game against the Pacers. Again, I think ultimately that was mostly the Pacers shooting out of their minds in the first quarter, and not much you can do about that. But it wasn't the greatest stretch of basketball the starters ever played by any means. And I can see if this continues where they lose a little bit in first quarters and they're just not quite, blowing teams away on the floor. People might say, oh, why doesn't Shed start? Or why doesn't, why don't they mix up the starting 5 and throw a Gradey Dick in there or something like that? I don't see it being worth the squeeze to change the starting 5. Look, it's a human enterprise running a basketball team. And you kind of have to play the politics element a little bit. And if it's just easier and more copacetic to start the 5 most expensive players on the team together, even if they're not a super ideal 100%, every piece is a perfect fit with one another group. I think that's fine because they're not getting run off the floor. They've totally recovered after their miserable start to the season. And they're just like a fine lineup that gets bolstered when you start to stagger in. And the strength of this team is over what it does over 48 minutes as opposed to what it does when starters are on the floor. This is not like the Denver Nuggets where they have to do well when Jokic is on the floor because historically they get run off the floor when he sits. No, like this is a different model of managing 48 minutes and it's perfectly fine. Like I don't have a problem with it. And it's not as though Darko is beholden to closing games with the starters if they're not performing well either. And I think he's shown that he will mix it up. He will play different lineups if he needs to. He'll sit Jakob Poeltl to go Scotty at the 5. He will put in a more shooting friendly lineup. I think we'll see plenty of closing with Jamal Shead and Mamu quickly in the backcourt, that 2-guard look that we've seen a little bit lately. Like, I don't think, I'm sure the starters think it's just going to be a thing we hear about all the time because it's the easy thing to poke at and be like, the starters aren't good. That's bad. And it's like, nah, no, like we put too much stock in who starts the game. It's cliche, but it's more about who finishes the game. And it's ultimately for the Raptors more about who's playing the 48 minutes of the game. And I have no problem if the politically friendly thing to do to keep things happy and happy-go-lucky in the room is, yeah, all the expensive guys start. It's fine to me, unless they're getting completely destroyed, which they're not. So it's not a big deal. And the bench being as good as it is makes it so you can get away if the starters are just a mild positive lineup on the whole, which I think they'll end up being. We'll come back on this side, close things out here with the good, the bad, and the as we always do after a Raptors basketball game. Thing I liked, thing I didn't like, thing that's got me intrigued. And we'll continue the conversation that we started on Friday a little bit about the transition play, both on offense and defense for the Raptors. I think it's kind of a really interesting trend. We'll get to that and more coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get it on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets for a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It's great if you want to go and play in-game. Maybe you're at a game. You want to liven up the in-person experience. If that's the thing you want to do, you can go play it on the easy FanDuel app. Or if you want to do sort of longer-term sports wagering. This is kind of what I do. I'm not much of a sports wagerer, but when I do, it's more on like, I think that team's going to do better than people think. I might take the over on that team on wins or something like that. Or I might take that team to go win it all come whatever sports finals it is, right? So in the NBA, if there's you feel like, maybe those Minnesota Timberwolves have a shot here as sort of the stealth dark horse in the Western Conference, or any team that's not the OKC Thunder. I think they're going to do it. You probably make some pretty decent scratch because they are going to have long odds because the Thunder are preeminent favorites out there. Throw some money down on them, make some money in 6 months' time, and that's a lot of fun. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Doer, a newer sponsor here on the show, a local sponsor here on the show. It has a brand new store for you to check out at 44 Ossington Avenue. What will you find at 44 Ossington Avenue? You will find the best jeans in the world. Yes, Doer makes the very most comfortable jeans I've ever worn. I have a pair. They sent me one, and they are fantastic. I had the fleece-lined taper in black, and they are wonderful. And as the winter starts to encroach, and I'm going to be outside shoveling and doing yard work and stuff like that, it's really nice to have some pants that are like, they look good. You see me out in the yard looking, tidying up my front stoop or whatever it is. You're going to be like, damn, Sean's looking good as he does this. And they're also very, very warm. They temperature regulate. You have the Cool Max as well that regulates your temperature and wicks moisture. That's a big deal. And yeah, those fleece line, man, just being outside in those, it's delightful. And they hold their shape too. And they have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. So they stretch without losing their shape, which nothing's worse than jeans that lose their shape. Simply put, Doer makes the most comfortable pants in the world without sacrificing style. And again, you can check them out at their new store in Toronto, 44 Ossington Avenue. That's walkable, baby. Just go walk on in, get some jeans. And when you do it, mention the promo code LOCKEDONToronto in store and get 15% off your first order, or check them out at duer.ca/LockedOnToronto for 15% off. That's doer.ca/LockedOnToronto for 15% off. Go say hi in person. Hi, Doer. Rounding things out here on your Monday edition of Locked On Raptors. We'll be back again tomorrow, by the way, to talk Raptors Hornets tonight as the Raptors look to win their 8th game from their last 9 against a Hornets team that, they can score a lot of points. They're not going to stop anybody. LaMelo Ball. Glad they got Nipple. He seems pretty good. The rest of that team bums me out. But we'll be talking about that on tomorrow's show. Of course, we got the regular lineup of stuff. Katie on Thursday. Vivek will be along to talk about the game tomorrow, and all kinds of fun stuff on deck this week. But on deck now is the good, the bad, and the It's the way we rounded every single episode of this here podcast in the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game. A thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and a thing that's got me a little intrigued from the latest in Raptors hoops. The good for me, I got sort of 2 here. One's just a quick one. I love watching the Raptors win a game on easy mode. I kind of missed the joy of this, like the sort of, oh yeah, it's a random game against a bad team tonight, and they're just going to walk them, and it's going to be stress-free. You're going to see some cool highlights, and you're going to go to bed happy. That was the case against the Pacers. I likened it in the Locked On Raptors Discord when we were chatting about it too. When you're playing a Mario game that you've played a million times before, and you've beaten the first level so many times, you can kind of do it at full speed with your eyes closed. Sometimes you'll like accidentally run into a spiky shell or a Goomba because you're just being lazy and you're complacent because you've done it a million times, but ultimately you're going to cruise through it and have no problems. That's kind of what it felt like watching the Raptors beat the Pacers. Yeah, a couple stumbles here and there, but ultimately not even a question they were going to win that game, and that's a lot of fun. The bonus good, Jakob Poeltl just looking like an easy bucket factory out there right now. Just playing in this offense, so much comes to him that's just wide open, easy stuff that he wasn't connecting on at the start of the year, but is very much connecting on now. And one thing with Poeltl, I know rebounding has been a bit of a concern for the Raptors to start the year. I do think, in particular in the defensive end, they've not been a terribly good defensive rebounding team. The offensive rebounding, they've kind of skewed, which we'll talk about in a sec. But with Poeltl on the floor, which, the Raptors are good defensive rebounding, which is good. They're a 73rd percentile defensive rebounding team with him out there. That's a nice thing. 73% overall defensive rebound percentage as well. Nice 73 symmetry there. But look, there's a chance their rebounding issues were mostly just tied to him having a sore back and missing some games. We'll see. Again, the offensive end, they're not really spamming the offensive glass. We'll talk about it, but the defensive end, maybe it's all right when Poeltl's out there. Either way, really good stuff from him. Another 20-point game. He was awesome. The bad, this is very quick. Just poor Pascal Siakam, my boy. Love him. And look, he'll be fine. The Pacers will be fine. Tyrese Halliburton will come back. They'll get like a top 3 pick or something like that. And they will be right back in the sort of the contenders conversation in the Eastern Conference. Maybe I'll pick them to win the East next year against their Raptors, Pacers conference finals. Who knows? But yeah, just it's tough to see Pascal have to do so much for a team that's giving him nothing back. And I hope he gets a nice long rest in the summer. Plenty of fun vacation. There's a lot of games left for him to play, but he's playing damn well. Like, that's the thing. He's so good, even with a bad supporting cast. He's going to like drag them to a couple wins here and there because that's Pascal Siakam. He's real good. So yeah, just sort of building off of some of the stuff we talked about on Friday and looking specifically at this game when it got a little hairy early on, when the Pacers were just red hot from 3. I'm wondering, and it might be required that this is actually a thing based on what kind of luck they're getting right now from 3-point shooting. But I do wonder if the Raptors have kind of insulated themselves a little bit from hot shooting nights the other way. And this is just a theory. We haven't seen it. This is why we do the This is where I theorize. The Raptors right now, with the way they're playing on offense and defense in transition, are kind of gaming the math in a really interesting way. Transition is the single best place to score points. That's the highest, efficiency play in basketball. And the Raptors have really honed in on that. And we talked about this again on Friday. So apologies if I'm repeating myself a little bit, but they have gamed the math so that on 30 to 40 possessions, 30 to 40% of possessions every night, that's like a lot of possessions. They are just absolutely juicing the stats towards themselves because they run all the damn time. They are still by far the number 1 team in terms of transition frequency, and they're number 3 in suppressing transition. And so they're forcing teams to play in the half court, which even if the Raptors half court defense is not great, it's like 22nd right now. It might be 20th after the game against the Pacers. Haven't checked. It was 22nd on Friday going into the game. Even if it's not like the greatest half court defense in the world, they're still allowing like 104 points per 100 possessions, whatever it is. Like, that's a bad offensive rating. And it's coming from more possessions in the half court than any other team is giving up. Like, they are just forcing other teams to play half court basketball, which is inherently less efficient. You couple that with the fact that they're taking like a normal number of threes. They're still like bottom 10 in 3-point rate, but they're not that far out of the middle of the pack or even the top 10. Like a couple nights where they take 45 threes. Okay, they're right back in there. And they're hitting their threes at an incredibly high clip as well. That's maybe luck. That might come back down a little bit, but like they got a lot of good shooters who are shooting well. And so I don't know how much. And like, for every Scotty Barnes extra 3 he's hit, Brandon Ingram's missed a whole bunch that he will hit. And everyone else is kind of shooting in line with what you'd expect outside of maybe Jamal Shead. And so, and even then, that'll get balanced out by Gradey Dick getting hot or something like that. And so I just think the way they're set up, like this is not a team that if you play against a team that has a crazy hot 3-point shooting night, that you're just guaranteed to lose because they game the math in other ways, particularly in transition defense and on the glass and on offense in transition, where they just have so many possessions where they are keeping teams from scoring at a high clip in the highest percentage or the highest scoring play type there is in transition, and they're just scoring themselves a ton in that type of possession because they're running so much on top of their offense just being good. And again, I think this transition thing is really interesting as like a trend to watch. It's so clearly influenced by who was in the finals last year. And, the Pacers and Thunder just running all the damn time, just getting it going. We're flying down the court. And it's an interesting sort. It's not just a straight copycat the Raptors are doing, right? It's not like they're like, well, they ran lots, so we run lots now too. And I think there are a lot of teams that kind of look at that and say, hey, we got to run now because we got to copy what the best teams did. I think the Raptors are almost kind of making that next evolution. This is what happens with basketball, right? Stuff happens and then evolution happens to kind of change the game. And this is why we love the sport. But I think what the Raptors are doing, where they've skewed offensive rebounding, largely because they can trust their offense to score at this point. We'll see if they start to struggle on the offensive end if this holds up. But they're not chasing offensive rebounds like they have in the past. They're clearly prioritizing transition defense. Again, you watch the tape. Shot goes up, 4 guys are back. Like, they are not crashing whatsoever. It's very clearly a coached thing that they are getting back in transition and suppressing the run. And I just think it's an interesting, natural next counter towards curbing transition play in a league where most teams are going to try to do the Thunder Pacers thing a little bit more on the heels of the Thunder Pacers finals. And so I think Darko's doing a really good job coaching this team. I think he's pressing the right buttons. And I think some of the strategy stuff, I'm going to ask him about this tonight, actually, just to kind of see if there is some intentionality before going into it. I do think there is, but it's just really interesting to watch. And I'm curious to see if they can kind of keep this up, because this could be a way, the sort of the new age way to game the math is, we just own the single highest efficiency play in the sport, both on offense and defense. We're suppressing it one way and we're scoring a ton the other way. And this is just what we do. And I think it's a really interesting evolution of basketball thing, because basketball, man, it's always changing. And that's why it's dank. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. As always, back again tomorrow, talking about Raptors, Hornets, likely with our pal Vivek Jacobs. So that'll be a lot of fun. And the regular week covering a good basketball team. It's a beautiful thing. I'm so energized talking about a team that doesn't make me question what I'm doing with my life every day. It's a real refreshing change, and can't wait to talk about them again tomorrow. We'll see you there. Thank you so much for hanging. Follow the show wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, rate, review. The Discord, link in the description of the podcast, is always free to join. Would love to see you there. Have a great night. Enjoy Raptors, Hornets. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.